Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another photo mishmash. This one being broadcast live May 15th, 2019. We're going to talk about DJI's GoPro Killer. Maybe it does have a nice feature that I want to share with you all. We're going to talk about Canon's 30 frames per second camera that they're working on. Nope. Despite the fact that that's what someone tweeted, that's not true. We'll talk about why in just a few moments. And as usual, we'll be reviewing your picks in Lightroom. Despite some unhappiness with Adobe that we'll be talking about as well. I feel like that's a reoccurring issue on this show. And we'll be talking about whatever else that Steve and I chat about as we do on this photo mishmash. And so glad to have Steve back with us again. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Good. It's awesome to be back. Sorry to miss you guys. I caught most of the rebroadcast of the shows with David Carr as guest host, which was really cool. He and I have become very, very good friends. And as I'm sure talked about, he's one of the instructors on our tours and just a great photographer, great guy. And we were just talking before the show about how jealous I was of his audio setup and how good he sounded on the show. For those of you who know, he's in the music industry forever. So I'm sure he's got some really great equipment, but I've got a new little setup here, doing the headphones, the microphone deal, and we'll see if I can sound half as good as Mr. Carr did.
Oh, you do. You definitely sound half as good. Maybe even 55%. And, I really can't give you too much crap because I'm jealous of the way David Carr sounds as well. And I'm sure we'll have some opportunities to have him back. I'd love to run this show as regularly as possible. And then Stephen, you and I were just hanging out in New Zealand last week this time, or just about in the previous week, which was a fantastic trip. Anything you want to share about that?
Oh man, that was so that is now right up there, close to Iceland. It doesn't take over Iceland, but it's right up there as one of my favorite places to do landscape photography and to tour. The people over there are just wonderful. They're happy. I said this to you probably 24 times during our tour, like a New Zealand or an even Australian person, they could be completely pissed off with you, but with that accent and the way they say things, it just sounds so friendly.
Yeah.
People joke about their accent and stuff all the time, but it's just a great culture. I was kind of expecting that, I guess. I was more expecting just to be in awe of the countryside and the photos that we got to take. But I love when you get to a place and you just totally fall in love with the culture and the people. And New Zealand was the whole package for me. So it's rare that I get home from a tour. We're pretty exhausted. We work hard. It's a lot of travel and stuff. And it's rare that I want to immediately turn around and go back. I need that time at home to kind of recharge the batteries and stuff, and then think about the tour. But New Zealand was different. I would have been perfectly happy jumping on a plane and flying another 14 hours from LAX back to Sydney and hang out there some more, because it was truly incredible. What an opportunity.
Yeah, I loved it. And I feel like I'm almost always plotting a quick return to places that we come from. How can I come back here? How can I come back here and bring my loved ones?
Yeah.
How can I come back and spend more time? Yeah, I remember doing that. Certainly in Iceland, we think about that a lot. Scotland, we thought about that. But New Zealand, oh man, and I spent an extra day and a half after you all left, rented a car, drove on the left side of the road for the first time in my life. It wasn't as tough as I thought. Getting out of the airport rental car parking lot, though, I had to go through like 8 roundabouts, honestly, within like 5 minutes of getting in the car. And so I just had to keep chanting, stay to the left, stay to the left, stay to the left. But what I forget to do is you have to look to the right to yield to cars. Yeah. Just totally different thinking and roundabouts. But I made it through, no real issues with the car. And this is a random story, but this is the kind of things we do here in the Photo Mishmash. I'll agree. The people of New Zealand were absolutely fantastic. On my extra day and a half, I headed over to the western side of the South Island. Definitely a little quieter over there. I saw very few people. And I stopped at this gas station that was just kind of in the middle of nowhere. Talking to the guy, really nice guy. He found out I was from America, found out I was from Seattle, as I'm figuring out which road snacks I want. And then he starts talking to me about, I think it's Jeffrey Dahmer. I think Jeffrey Dahmer is the serial killer that's from the Washington State area originally. And it dawns on me after like 5 minutes of this guy talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and how he killed his people and how he made his way across the country and he worked in some newspaper. Then I'm all alone in this gas station in the middle of nowhere with this guy talking to me about Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm like, is this one of those things where the victims later were like, holy shit, I should have gotten out of there hours ago. But he seemed like a really nice guy. He just happened to be interested in that topic and connected.
But see, that's it. That's the culture. That's the accent just lures you in, right? Like, well, you couldn't do anything mean. You sound too nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Psycho.
True. It's true. But it is absolutely beautiful country, and I think McKay trip, a tentative plan for returning in 2021, and I hope I can get there sooner. But in reality, we're pretty booked with travel. But it is a fantastic place.
Yeah, totally amazing.
Let's just two quick reminders. One, if you're watching the show and you're not a Photo Enthusiast Network member, well, you are missing out. You're getting this tiny piece of Steve and I, which is what we call kind of your edumacainment. What is it? I don't know. That wasn't the word I wanted to come out of my mouth.
Wait, did you just slip a McKay into?
Did I? Is that
wow.
I should play it off like I exactly meant to say that. I just kind of wanted to combine education and entertainment, which that is a word that people combine. I don't know. Seriously, though, we have a ton of educational content in the Photo Enthusiast Network site. You get a new video, you get a new tip each week, plus the tons and tons of content that are already there. There's a free 10-day trial. You should check it out, photorec.tv/join. You get a bunch of gifts with that trial that are yours to keep, even if you don't want to stick around for longer than 10 days. Although one of the favorite things in chat room, I haven't welcomed you yet. Most of you in the chat room are part of the Photo Enthusiast Network. You are what make this community as wonderful as you do. You ask the questions that we then research and answer for you. Sometimes we know the answers right away. Sometimes. And it's just such an awesome community of helpful, lovely people that I'm just really proud to be part of it.
Yeah. I know we talk about it, and there's a reason, each show it's important that we bring this up because we've been broadcasting this live to Toby's greater audience for a while now, and there's a lot of people that might tune in and we start talking about pen and stuff, and they have no idea what we're even talking about. So it's important to make you guys aware of the community if you're not aware of it, and ask anybody in the chat room that's a member. It's definitely a great value if you get yourself involved in what we're doing. And most importantly for me anyway, is it's just a super nice group of people. There's not many groups out there these days where you can avoid, the political climate or some of the nastiness that just goes on anywhere on the web. And this isn't like that at all. It's just a place where people are friendly and they're friends, and they're unintimidating. We try to be as unintimidating as possible. And like Toby said, we don't have all the answers, but somebody might. And if we don't, you've piqued our curiosity enough, I'm sure we'll look it up and find some answers for you. So we're just passionate about photography and bringing others along on the journey with us.
Yep. Well said. Well said. And just to give you a couple of quick concrete bits of content that went out in the last couple of days, we had a new Tuesday tip called A Different Way to Do Macro. That is from Allie. I did a new video. That was just a little, it's not the video that will come this week. There will be another one, but I just wanted to get a little bit out there. Lightroom got an update yesterday. So I put a video out about the real big new feature is texture. It's kind of like clarity. I'll demonstrate it when we get into our Lightroom tips and tricks section. And Steve, you put out a video on using Define to reduce noise in star photos. That actually went out at the end of last week.
Yeah, we did a lot of star photography in New Zealand, which is so by design. You're looking at the Milky Way from a different point of view, and it's so bright. I mean, it's probably one of the coolest places that I've done star photography, and you've turned me on to that a couple of years ago, and it has quickly become one of my favorite things to shoot. So New Zealand, I'm looking through my pictures, and it seems like 50% of them are star photos, and I started editing some, and I found myself using that tool quite often in editing star photos. So decided to put out a video about that. Figured if I'm in that boat and other people are coming home from that trip with a lot of star photos, maybe it'll help them out. So check that out. And yeah, you've had quite a few little videos coming out recently. I watched that one on the texture last night. I've had a chance to use it a couple times, so we'll talk more about that as we get into editing. And then you just put out something on the Pixel 3a, right? You had that.
That's right. Yep, I actually have the Pixel 3a right here. This is the new budget-minded Pixel phone from Google.
So
I'm pretty impressed with it.
Case on that one. What happened?
What do you mean? It's a nice little fabric-y case.
Yeah, it's normal looking. What happened?
You mean what? You don't like this case, Steve?
That dude with the flying boogers.
The dude with the flying goo. I can't hold it. You know, I can't make it bigger because you won't be able to see it. You know, I don't know. I'm not going to complain. Google sent it to me. That's the case they decided I should get. I don't know if I should be offended or something else. And then for this one, yes, they sent a very boring, just kind of fabric-y case. This is the 3A. This is the 3XL, not the 3A XL. I don't get both phones. And just, it's the same camera. It's the exact same camera system, which is to say one of the absolute best in a smartphone. And I'm pretty impressed that they put it in $399. It's a good deal. Everybody that I trust online review-wise is saying, you know, it's a solid buy if you're looking for a budget Android phone. And with the B&H deal, $100 gift card. So it really kind of knocks down the price to $299, of course, if you want to buy other things from B&H, and even a deal to get a couple of months of free service. So pretty nice.
Is that phone considered to be, so that's a budget Android phone. Would that be in line with like the iPhone X10R?
That's what I've seen a lot of people comparing it to. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Right. Android's a little foreign to me for those watching. I've been an Apple guy forever, so I'm kind of caught up in that whole universe.
Yeah, but and honestly, yeah, the iPhone side to me is a little foreign. I just know that really great cameras and all of these cameras in the top end phones are great. In the budget phones, usually you don't get great cameras, but the iPhone, it's decent, and the Google Pixel, it's pretty dang good.
Yeah, I've been seeing that thing's been getting some huge rave reviews. And I know that the Samsung, I think they're on the S10 or something now.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're getting into big money, right? Those are,
yeah, you're up at a grand. I mean, over twice the price. So yeah. And I'd love to get my hands on the P30 just to check out that optical zoom, which I think this wasn't on a show you were on, Steve, but it has a periscope design to be able to zoom inside.
Oh, cool.
It's just kind of
keep it. Is it still water resistant?
Yep.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it is pretty impressive. It is. And just one more quick pen thing. Steve, you just finished up today the image review for April, right?
Yep, right before the show, actually.
That's right. So you can't say anything more about winners or anything of that sort, but this is another benefit of Pen, getting your images reviewed by professional photographers each month with the potential to be the photographer of the month, or have the image of the month and get a really nice prize from Bay Photo.
Yeah. And I do want to give a little plug about that, just to say, please get some images submitted. The month before, in March, we actually had the largest number of submissions. I think that was the month that you and I did, Toby, when we recorded the image review. David and Allie had a lot of personal things that they were dealing with their family. But this month, for April, we're always a month behind because we're reviewing at the end of the month. April was a very small number of submissions, so I'm not sure why there was a big swing there. So all that is to say, for this month, May, get your images submitted by May 25th, you know, and spend some time working those. You know, we get a lot of stuff that comes in right at the deadline, which is fine, but there are times when we see some of these images and it just looks like, I mean, we've gotten to the point where we know a lot of these people that are submitting, and we get some of these images and think like, I don't know that you really gave this a whole lot of thought. It's not that it was a bad image. It's just that, you know, we know the potential of a lot of our members. And so, you know, Bay Photo has some awesome prizes and for winning top image. And then, you know, if you're in the top 5, that all goes into the year-end review. So all hope isn't lost if you don't win something that month. We take a look at it at the end of the year as well. So yeah, just get those images in.
Yeah, and you mentioned some images, maybe not being up to the standards that some photographers are. What's really nice is between this show and the kind of feedback and Lightroom tips and tricks we give you, plus the ability to post in the Facebook group, plus the forum if you're not a Facebook user or you just like another source. So really you got again, 3 kind of build-ups before submitting to that the highest level of review that we offer here at Photo Enthusiast Network.
Yep.
And it's just, there's just really one way to grow as a photographer is just to get out and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot. But I love your analogy, Steve. If you're just showing your pictures to friends and family, it's like eating a bunch of candy. It tastes great. It's wonderful. Your mom is like, oh, I love that one. Oh, I love that one too. You're such an amazing photographer. And you might be, but get your work out there in front of some other people that can give you constructive feedback that is really going to show you how to improve, what to look for when you're out in the field, what to look for when you're editing your pictures. We just can't say enough good stuff about it.
Yeah, and remember, eating some candy here and there, it's a lot of fun. You have a great time. It's a nice treat, but you don't want to make a diet out of it. So it's not to say you shouldn't look at your family and friends for some feedback and stuff, and certainly helps boost you up. But we like to think that we deep dive a little bit more and encourage you in certain ways that they, as non-professional shooters, can. So.
Yep. Okay, so we're going to dive into part of our favorite part of the show, which is where if you're a Photo Enthusiast Network member, you get to submit images each week to us that we then work on in Lightroom and sometimes a little bit of Photoshop too, to kind of give you some feedback of what you can do, the tools you can use, and how you can make it look a little bit better. So we're going to jump into that. We've got a fair number of images right now. And a couple quick things here, sharing with everybody, sharing my whole screen. This document you can see, that is the Mishmash notes. You can find all of that information at photorec.tv/MMH. But here we go, starting in Lightroom with Maggie's shot first.
I can't wait till we get to that Slot Canyon shot because I saw GFXR or 50R.
It's very nice, but I tell you what, Brian needs our help with is quite challenging. I've been thinking and even working on it a little bit. So Steve, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, cool.
So because we have a fair number, we are going to try to, move through these relatively quickly because we've got some interesting gear news that I teased as well to get to. But first up, we've got Maggie here with, I'm going to, oh, excuse me. I'm going to say Italy.
What? No, this is East Tennessee. All those Smoky Mountains.
Is this what your backyard looks like?
Yeah, this is exactly what East Tennessee looks like.
Nice little terracotta roofs. I don't see any cowboy hats or buckles or shotguns in the back of the truck.
Yeah, no, they're down there. You just can't see them. Concealed carry. Everybody's concealed carry around here.
All right. So a couple of things I love is the kind of this green and the orange. That works really nicely. And I'll say it, we got this nice little hug of trees. They just seem to like they're hugging this bit of town right here. Nice foliage hug. Yes. What I don't love is this building over here that is under renovations, as you find often. This building here in the foreground is under renovations too, but it doesn't bother me very much. This over here kept my eye, especially that bright pipe. I just don't know if this part of the picture is really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to kind of come in a little bit and down. And let's see what we think. Is that a little too tight?
No.
So I just really kind of like this, tight quarters of older buildings surrounded by the trees.
Yeah, I've kind of got a very different take on this image.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
And I know we have a lot that we're going through, so I'll be quick. And this isn't to say that it was taken wrong or anything. It looks like the shot was taken perfectly. You got detail in the sky, you've got detail in the foreground. So great job on getting the right ingredients. Now, when we're sitting here making a meal out of this, I would have done what you did, Toby, come in from the left and get that building out of there. I would consider even coming up from the bottom quite a bit above the building in the foreground that's being renovated, because that is a bit distracting. So you'd have to go to, yeah, unlock crop and come up. So just, you know, some of those buildings are kind of in your foreground. So this is going to change the perspective to more of a layered feel of buildings in the foreground, and then you're going to focus a little bit more on that background. So you got this kind of sea of homes, and I would probably even come in from the right side a bit and lose that foliage. Yes, and that's the first thing I should have said, is straightening out that horizon.
Yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with that, but I think I'm getting there. I'm looking at this. I'm using this building here and this building back here, and
Yeah, there's kind of that water line in the back above that. I don't know, one building that looks like probably where it should be straight. So yeah, that looks pretty good right there. And then from here, honestly, I know the terracotta roofs are pretty and there's some green and stuff, but there's some brown. There's just a lot of color distraction for me. I would consider going black and white with this image and really punch it up in the contrast to show detail. And it can become kind of timeless. Not to say a terracotta roof isn't timeless, but there's that whole section back there that there's not much going on. And when it's black and white, you don't see it as just this kind of brown, muddy section. It could be, you know, green fields back there. You don't know. So that would just be, you know, a suggestion that I'd have on this image. And I love black and white with architecture and stuff, because it can really bring out the angles and the different shades and where the light's hitting and stuff like that. Might be a good one to punch up the texture slider on this one too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So those of you who don't know, Lightroom came out with an update, was it, I think yesterday or the day before, that has a new slider here in the present section, and it's called texture. So we now have texture, clarity, and dehaze. And if it wasn't a black and white, we'd also have vibrance and saturation available to us. Texture, think of it as a chunky clarity, really. And let's just do clarity for old time's sake. Clarity really looks for the edges and emphasizes the contrast. And so you can see that there are little edges in this view now with clarity pumped way up that just get caught and made more emphasis than we want. And that's clarity is certainly useful, but you want to keep that fairly light. Texture we can go to 100, and it doesn't look nearly as bad as clarity. I still don't think 100 is good, but it certainly, you can be a little bit more heavy-handed with it, I'm finding, and it just really kind of punches up kind of the bigger edges and contrast. The example that Lightroom or Adobe shared was bark on a tree, and I used that in my example that I posted for the pen folks. Here, I think it helps with the terracotta tiles and some of the edges of the buildings, but unlike clarity, it doesn't really catch all of the little finer details that we don't want to pump up because they start to become distracting.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a great slider. I've just played around with it. I did one photo where I used it, and I can tell that it's something that I'll definitely get a lot of use out of. So that was a great ad by Lightroom.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think black and white is a nice way to go. I think color can be possible here as well. I again like the orange and green. So I think, Maggie, you got either options, but you do have a really nice starting point here. I will say now here back in color, I feel like the texture is showing up a little bit too much kind of in the noise of the distant mountains. So it does depend on whether or not you're working in color or black and white.
Yeah, you know, now that we're in a little tighter, the color is a little bit less of a distraction because there's just less in the foreground. And I really like the color too. So my suggestion on black and white wasn't to say that that's the way it should be. It's just I wanted to see it that way, and it could be a good candidate for that. So
yeah. Well, at least in the chat, Kate so far agrees with you, and I'm interested to see what other folks, but I definitely think black and white was a strong option as well. All right, moving on to the Ursula's Starfish Sunset Spectacular.
That's a cool shot, Ursula. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, look at that sunset. That is beautiful.
a gorgeous sunset. Now, this might be controversial, or Steve, you might completely agree with me. I don't know. Even as much as we've traveled, I still can't read your brain about every picture. But the starfish stuck in the sand is jarring to me.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And I either think I want it to be just laying there, or it doesn't need to be in the shot at all.
Yeah, no, that's not controversial at all. I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of debris there that's kind of making up the background of the starfish. You got the water line that's cutting the top leg, you know, in the background. So it's kind of an odd placement. I think if it was laying on the ground in that plain sand, the clean sand that's right in front of us, and then you have those debris and wash layers and stuff, it would just be maybe a little bit stronger. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough because I mean, this is such a gorgeous scene, but the starfish stuck in there, it kind of looks artificial or fabricate, like it was posed that way.
Yeah, and you know, some in the chat are wondering if it was a composite. Ursula is in chat as well, and this is her picture. She said, "Nope, she brought the starfish with her."
Okay.
You know, we're gonna touch on an article in the after the gear section where we talk a little bit about the importance of putting the illusion of depth into your image. And I think Ursula, you're attempting that here, and I really like the idea of with wider angle shots, some kind of interesting foreground element that leads you into the shot. But for me, the way it's sticking up and the fact that it's kind of intersecting with the water here, it breaks my concentration more than kind of brings me into the shot.
Yeah, yeah.
But go ahead,
Yeah,
Steve.
I mean, there's a lot of about this shot that I love. I love the leading line going from left to right. I love the intentionality of it, actually. So, you know, I applaud the effort there because we really want to encourage people to be intentional about what they're doing and where they're placing things. And she did a nice job, and it's such a gorgeous scene. I'd love to see another shot here without the water coming up on the shore, just the soft water with the kind of decrepit structures in the background, and then that gorgeous sunset. I think would be a really cool minimalistic
Do you mean
shot.
almost not? I'm not suggesting we should crop this like that, but a shot that was more, you know, in this realm.
Yeah, yeah, where you know, and really it would require a different positioning of your body when you're taking the shot, but something just almost surreal, like you're looking at it going, you can hardly tell where the horizon is except for the line created from those structures, you know, because the sky is reflecting in the water so nicely.
Yeah. 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 I really think there's some lovely reflections there. I think this shutter speed of 1/15th of a second is interesting because we have just a little bit of water texture, just a little bit of the motion there. But otherwise, yeah. So yeah, I agree, Steve.
Now this is not a DNG, right? We're not able to see the sliders.
That's right. Ursula, we haven't something's blocking Ursula from being able to send DNGs, so she gives us JPEGs.
I think she did a really nice job. I mean, you were just heavy-handed enough. You're kind of at that breaking point of going too salty or, you know, too saturated. It may back it off just slightly, but I like how vibrant and saturated this looks. It doesn't look overly, you know, manufactured or yeah, I think she did a really nice job on the.
I love the texture in the clouds too, and I'm kind of they feel like longer than 1/15th of a second to me.
Yeah, they
but
do.
they're just very nice. Nice, Ursula. If you've got another one from the scene, I hope you do. I'd love to see it.
Let us know where it is. I want to go there.
Yeah, somewhere along the Gulf Coast, I think, is where Ursula gets a lot of her pictures. And another from that general region, we've got this. It's called the Humas House. Humas House. I think. I'm sure I'm saying that right. And I love Love this kind of deliberate setup. And talking about another hug, we've got a grassy hug this time around this little pond. And of course, this reflection. Steve, I'm going to lean on you again for a second. First thing I think of when I see architecture is I think Steve. For those who don't know, Steve spends a lot of time shooting real estate, and you always make sure your lines are tip top, nice and straight.
Yep.
And I think there could be a little bit of guided transform happening here. What do you think?
Maybe, you're standing far enough away and the camera looks like it was pretty level. So it doesn't look like there's much distortion going on. This actually would be a shot, and I don't know if it would have been even possible if you stayed in the exact position where you are, but you got up higher and then tilted your camera down. You might not be cutting off the reflection of the building right at the edge of the water there. And then if you're able to do, now it's bright sunlight, this is probably middle of the day, put a filter on there if you're able to, you're on a tripod or something and you're able to do a longer exposure, it would totally smooth out that water. It wouldn't take much, but it would be just a beautiful, clean reflection. But having said that, that's not what we have. So it looks pretty straight on. So there's not a whole lot of leveling or transforming that will need to happen, but I would go to transform like you have open and click auto just to see what Lightroom says. I sometimes just use that and it does a great job.
It moved it a micrometer.
Yeah. So go back to off.
Yeah.
Oh man, just barely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of what I suspected. There wasn't a whole lot of tweaking that needed to happen. Now, if you did want to go through and use the guided transform and draw a couple of lines, you can click on guided right next to auto, and that allows you 4 lines, typically 2 verticals and 2 horizontals is the way to go. So that's a good line. And I don't know that I would choose that as my horizontal. I'd probably choose the landscape where the grass meets the trees.
So like over here?
A little further back behind the light pole there, you can see where the grass edge kind of is up. Sorry.
Oh, and up here.
Yeah, yeah, like that would be my horizontal line.
Okay.
You just want to make sure, because that's kind of your horizon line.
Gotcha.
That's straight. And that now what it's done is it's created that first column is perpendicular to that line, and then another one there will kind of straighten the.
Yeah, pretty minor. One thing that I'm noticing, let's say done with that, is just, and I think it's mostly from the grass. The grass is reflecting back a little bit of green up onto these beautiful white columns. And I would love to first off, just get the dropper. We know those should be something pure whitish. If we look here at the little percentages, red, green, blue, we can see that green is the higher. So that's going to show up a little bit more. But we can also just click it and it's moved the tint to the right a little bit. So again, you can think of this as adding red or more often subtracting the color to the left. And it is adjusted the blue. I don't know if I agree with that. I actually would go to the right a little bit because we feel like this is a warm, sunny day. I am okay with a little bit of warmth. What we get on a lot of times on a sunny day is kind of that blue light that really comes through.
Yeah, and I would take this into Photoshop and clip out that harsh shadow that's creeping in on the right side on the grass. That Photoshop would do a great job of fixing that right away. You could either use the clone tool or just content aware would probably work okay right there. The other shadows are fine. You see the shadow from the tree coming into the lake and stuff. Hey, it's the middle of the day, but that one is just showing enough and then it ends abruptly. So I would just take that out.
Yeah. And I might add just a little bit more contrast back in, just to make it feel a little bit richer. But it's a lovely image. Very nice.
Yeah, really cool.
All right, let's move on. We've got Brian's medium format GFX 50R. Not that we're
that's a big file.
That at all. Yep. So nice big file, tons of detail in it, and just really a beautiful shot. Brian's specific request here is how can he clean up that sand down below?
Oh, okay.
I know, tricky. So I popped this in before the show. I popped this into Photoshop
Sorry.
And yeah, that was actually my second attempt. My first was just to blur this area here. And, you know, I couldn't come up with anything that really, so if we go to filter, we got to be on that layer, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, just as a quick example.
Okay.
And then you could just kind of start to move this to the side, and you can see that it gets blurry, but there's never a point where the footprints disappear and it just looks like sand, because you're just losing all texture of the sand.
Yeah.
So then, you know, I was like, well, what if we stick some other sand in there? And that doesn't look very good either.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Brian and Steve, you got anything?
Well, I would probably start by going into your clone stamp tool and sample from, now you want to work kind of horizontally. So sample from a piece of the sand that doesn't have a boot track in it, or a shoe track. Hold that option key down to select the area, and then just kind of drag it across horizontally, avoiding, you know, just doing a lot of spotting, because over time you're going to see a lot of these round spots in there. So you'll probably want to make your brush a little bit bigger than that, and sample from right there. That looks pretty clean. And then just drag, you know, either direction, and just do a little bit at a time, and then constantly resample and resample and resample to avoid, you know, discoloration or things looking fake and stuff like that. So here's the thing, it's going to take time, but we have the tools available to do it. So if it's a shot that you're really passionate about and you want to go to print and you put it up on the wall of your house, or you're entering competition or a show or something like that, you just have to take the time to do it. I'm sorry, I just don't have a quick fix it answer for you.
Steve, that's not this age we're in. We're in the age of quick fixes. Come on, let me slap my coral pink dune sand on there and say it looks great.
I love when somebody says, well, that just takes so long. And my common thing that I want to do is I just want to look them in the eye and say, yeah, it does. It takes time. It just does. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if you want to do it right, it takes time. So that's kind of what you're faced with here. You can also go in with your spot healing tool and just do some spot healing on certain areas that it's the deepest. So remember, you're taking a three-dimensional object and placing it on a two-dimensional piece of paper. So all you're really looking at are darks and lights. You know, when you get beyond the color. And so using that spot healer, you can just kind of zoom in and look at some of the darker boot tracks and just kind of spot out some of the deeper places. And over time, you do enough of that, and it really helps clean things up. I had to do this on a sandfall image that I sold to a client recently. And I'll tell you, I probably spent a solid 2 hours just cleaning the sand up underneath. And when I got done, it still looked very natural, but all the little debris, all the little twigs and, you know, boot tracks and stuff like that, they were gone, but it still looked like textured sand.
All right, so I want to be more helpful. Can we at least suggest some good music to listen to while he does this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You got to have good music on. I always edit with my headphones on and great music playing. So yeah, that's a must.
Yeah. Kate is asking, what tool am I using right now? I am using the clone stamp tool. S on the keyboard is the keyboard shortcut for that. You could also switch back and forth with the J tool.
Oh, you know what? I may have misspoken. I'm sorry. A clone stamper will help. I was thinking of the content aware.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd get a better sampling and dragging of that. But they're quite similar actually. But what I meant to say was content aware. Sorry.
That's okay. So what do you mean? Do you mean the spot healing brush, or do you mean?
No, if you go down, there you go. It was just a couple below the spot healing.
Okay, sorry, that's what I was using. I knew what you meant, Steve. I knew what you meant. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, somebody might say, well, why can't we do like, the content aware fill? Well, it's got to have something to see to think that that's where you should put in there. And it just doesn't. And I saw David Watts in the chat wondered if we could blend the two sands together. I didn't spend a whole lot of time before the show on it, but I did try that a little bit. And, as soon you either have that fake sand or, you lower the opacity and the treads all just start to show through. So you might be able to kind of work between the two of them, but I think Steve's slow and methodical with some good music on is probably the best approach.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it just takes time, especially when you're shooting with a camera like that captures all that detail. I mean, there's pros and cons to it. You get all the detail, but you get all the detail.
Bring a broom next time, Brian. That's actually not a little hand broom to like.
Actually, that's a brilliant idea. Next time we go to Slot Canyons, I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring a little, just one of those little hand brooms, just put it in my backpack. It's a good idea.
Yeah. And for those who think we're joking around, well, we go to Horseshoe Bend, Slot Canyon. It is not Antelope. And we actually have the canyon to ourselves for a couple of hours. And we can do those things.
Yeah. Brian just asked in the chat room, could you unsharpen the sand a bit so the treads fade? And the answer to that is yes, you can do that. So you can isolate that spot or you can use a paintbrush. And this actually, Brian, could be a spot where you use that new texturing tool, but you move it to the left. So like you would on skin tones and stuff like that, it would just kind of blur it. It would kind of soften it out. So yes, you can do that. You probably just have to paint it on, or like Toby's doing here is you just isolate that one section and bring down the detail on it.
Yeah, apparently I haven't updated my Photoshop. I don't have texture in there, but let's real quick here. Let's see what we get when we bring texture all the way down. Not so much.
Yeah, you don't want to lose it on the walls either.
Yeah, and I have to say though, it seems to do a pretty good job. Let's brush on real quick a brush just in this area that we also, because texture is also available in your individual local area adjustments, graduated filter, radial filter, and brush. And I'm not seeing a ton of difference.
I liked Martian or Martin commented, write your signature in the sand. That's a good way to go. I like that.
That's a good way to go. Yeah. And so, you can get some of that, but I think, Steve, your method of just really going in there, sampling in, is there's just enough clean sand that you can get it.
Yeah, now I will say for this particular image, Brian, too, is the crop of this image. I don't know if he already cropped in or not, but I wouldn't use the crop that you have. I would use that left side as your leading line coming in from the lower left corner. So coming up, I mean, that eliminates some of the footprint sand right off the bat. And yeah, I mean, that's very square, so I'd probably come in from the right. But and then the tonality of the shot to me on my screen here looks very pink, and you probably got some violet and magenta in there. It's really kind of red. I would choose a different white balance, and I'd kind of work it from there because it just looks really red. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And maybe boost the orange a little bit so you get that warmth in there without that harsh red.
Yeah, I think that's a nice tip. Yeah. All right. And Brian agrees. He loves that idea of the watermark in the sand.
There you go. Geez, it was that simple. We could have saved ourselves 5 minutes.
Eli's asking a good question about stacking it several times, and is there a blend mode that would average them out? The problem is, Eli, you're just stacking the exact same shadows and darks and textures on top of each other. You'd have to shift them all a little bit, and then maybe. But again, I think all of those things are going to average out to being equal to about the same time as Steve's method. So plus you get to listen to tunes. Okay, moving on, we got a shot from Heather. I know that parts of California in the last month or so had some super blooms, and this looks like one of those nice places.
Yeah, Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I like the fact that there's some people in there in terms of being able to give perspective.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't like the clumps of people and stuff. And oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, she cropped in quite a bit on that.
Yeah. Yep. It already is cropped in a bit.
So I would, yeah, I think the crop was probably a pretty good move. I do, yeah, I like it in maybe a little tighter. What I was going to say is that there's one person right in the middle that was looking to the side, and they would be a great subject to use for perspective, but I would probably move them over. So we're getting into Photoshop to do all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I would eliminate. So I know David Carr talks about this all the time, and it's a great analogy. If you were going to paint this scene, would you paint in that dead, wood that's on the ground to the left of the tree with a couple people in it and a cooler?
Mm-hmm.
And then would you paint the wood over there with the people sitting on it on the right side of the tree? So I wouldn't. So I would go in and I would actually clip that stuff out of there. But I like the idea of leaving a person somewhere in there to give you perspective in terms of just size of the tree and where they are in the flowers and stuff like that. And you got the human element in the image.
Yep. Yeah. I think I let pulling, chopping those people out is kind of easy. It kind of puts the tree a little bit more prominently on the third. And then now let's try using the content aware. Oh, oops, that's not the lasso I want. I want just a nice little lasso here to get these out. I will disagree though and say that I think I could see myself painting in this tree as a natural bench with those people. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can leave that in there and it's be fine.
Yeah. A little bit of a shadow that got duplicated. Always, always, always. This goes for Brian and in this shot. When you are kind of doing this content aware fill, watch for things that get repeated that you that don't look natural.
And what I like to do is I typically zoom in very, very tight on whatever I'm working on, and I'm very careful about how I outline that. I'm fine going outside of it. In fact, you want to pull some of the content around it. But if it's going to be something larger like that, I would also consider not the content aware fill. I got tripped up on this earlier, but and not the cloner, whatever the patch tool is, where you can bring in the background, like you sample an area and then paint over it.
But I think this is a nice shot. I think it's a little bit stronger with less people, but leaving some in. And the only other change that I made back in Lightroom was I brought the shadows up a little bit more, just to kind of bring out some of that there in the tree, some of the darkness in the tree. You could also kind of come into the color itself. You could make the green pop a little bit more and try to make it just a little bit brighter. Really like these individual tools. If you haven't watched this before, it looks like Heather has been in here and has made some adjustments. It allows you to really punch up those specific colors that then, keeps natural. If you just did the overall saturation, there would be weird colors introduced in places you wouldn't want.
Yeah, and this image could be a nice candidate for creating your own sort of sun flare. And I don't mean sunburst. I mean the flare, like the tutorial that I did a couple months back. Even though you can't see the sun, you can see the shadow and where it's being cast. So you can imagine the sun kind of coming in on that right side, and use a radial filter. If you guys haven't seen it, watch that tutorial. It's very simple, and you can kind of create a bit of a blinding sun flare coming in on that side, showing that light's shining on that side of the tree, and it just gives it another kind of bright element in the sky.
Yep. All right. Nice done, Heather. Hope we gave you some good suggestions. Now we've moved on to Brendan's got this sunset shot. I think sunset. And surfer. That's very pretty. It's really nice, soft tones.
Yeah, it is. It's extremely pretty, and I'll tell you what I'm torn on is. And some people probably want my head on a platter here. I would do a wide crop, a wide, narrow, horizontal crop, and I would actually crop out those foreground waves and the surfer and just have that really cool sunset back there. I'd love to just see it that way.
Yeah, I agree. Brendan, if you could have been down on the shore and had that surfer kind of almost on the same level as the sun, I think that'd be okay. But because you're shooting down on him, he's just so close to the edge of the frame. The interesting sun and the, let me just reset real quick, and the interesting surfer are just so far apart.
Yeah, that's the way to say it. There's so much middle ground there. So you've got visual interest in your foreground. There's a great story going on right there. And then you have all this empty space, and then you have this unbelievable sunset up there. So visually, you're kind of like having to choose between, okay, do I want to focus on the sunset or the surfer down here? And I think if you're down lower, you compress that middle section, and I think it would be a stronger image.
Yeah. I'm curious real quick here. Image, let's just duplicate real quick. What if we did image, edit, content aware scale, and, oh, wait, I want to hold down Alt, I think. No, what button do I want to hold down that lets me, there we go, Shift. Let's see if we, and turn that off for a second. Let's see what happens. Content aware scale is Photoshop's supposed to look at the image and figure out what areas it can compress and squish that doesn't really impact. And man, my computer or Photoshop is quite slow. And well, it seemed to compress the top of the image only and not the middle.
Yeah, look at what the horizon line did.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some kind of magnetic resonance, gravitational waves that from the sun, or it's actually boiling away the water. So yeah, okay, we're just gonna pretend
we have a tsunami coming in from the side.
We're gonna pretend I didn't do that. You could possibly try to cut some of the water in the middle and then blend, but I think this is a strong image, as you suggested, Steve. Somewhere right in that general area, just really lovely.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful, simple shot, and now you're just totally focused on the fact that the sun is going down behind the mountains, and I love how you can slightly, kind of make out in the haze that there's a little mountain range back there. I think it looks really pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, very nice. All right, we're going to move on to Melanie. She spent a little time in Sydney. She was on our New Zealand trip, but spent a little time in Sydney. And I think this is a long exposure down. I don't know the name of this bridge, but I believe it's there in Sydney. Yes,
it is. It's right by the Opera House, actually. This is where we spent a night there, and we had dinner overlooking that bridge. It was just gorgeous. I'm assuming this is that bridge right by the Opera House.
Yeah, nice.
Great shot. What does it say for her exposure time? Does it
30 seconds?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did a really nice job with this. And this is, you can see, you get a couple benefits from doing a long exposure at nighttime like this. You get the water that has been smoothed out, so you have this gorgeous reflection kind of coming down on that right side. But look at the lights. They all have this really cool, sparkly burst to them. And I personally love that look. I think it looks totally cool.
Yeah.
Quite honest with you, not a whole lot of suggestions that I have. Melanie, I think Melanie is a great photographer, and I've really enjoyed seeing her improve over the time that we've spent together on various tours. And I think she did a really nice job with this picture. I think I'm pretty hard pressed to offer any suggestions or tips. I think she did a
Yeah, I agree. I'm just curious real quick, if I brought a gradient up from the bottom, graduated filter, and brought the exposure up just a little bit for a little bit more shine in the water and color. But that's minor. Really nice. Nice shot. Okay, and we'll do one more real quick. I think maybe this is from the bridge.
Was this Melanie's as well?
This is Melanie's as well, yep.
Okay, yep. Okay. Yeah, with a picture like this, the simplicity of and intentionality of what you're shooting goes away compared to her previous picture. Mm-hmm. So here you've got almost chaos, right? The boats are just kind of going all different directions and stuff. And so where do you want the viewer to focus? So if it was me, I would take the crop in from the left. I'd completely take out the beginnings of the islands and stuff over there. I'd take, yeah, that boat out. So now that right there is a stronger image, and you've got the leading line down in that lower left corner of the boats traveling in the same direction, and then obviously the opera house there. So that helps. You still have the boat wake that's running across, almost horizontal. So you know, as much as I'd hate to lose that leading line in the lower left corner, I may even bring the crop just way up and above that second boat wake line that cuts across, unless you're going to go into Photoshop and clip that out. So we're getting in pretty tight on this picture at this point, but it's looking at a wide scene and creating a simpler story.
Yep. Yeah, I think good things. I think both are good things to think about. I didn't mind this as much here, but I do see there's just a lot of, basically 2/3 of not much, just kind of trail of boat and boat here. But it does show, you know, it does do a nice job of kind of showing the busyness. But you actually don't lose that here, really. You only lose one boat and one trail.
Yeah.
So you still have that. Plus, the opera house really starts to feature more prominently now.
And this is a great example of why a long lens can be an outstanding landscape lens. A lot of times people think wide angle or the 24-70 range. But, you know, if you're shooting with a 70-200 or even a 100-400, you can be far away and focus in on a scene like this, create some simplicity and not have to crop it in where you start to lose detail and structure.
Yep. Yeah. And why, Steve, you were talking about crop a little bit. I just made a couple of quick edits, just added a little contrast, highlights down, just to get a little bit more texture out of the wonderful roof of the opera house. Shadows down, whites back up, and blacks down a little bit. Let's see what happens when we move texture to the right on this image. Let's see, I don't know if there's anything that needs it, but you know, it does seem to make the opera house pop just a little bit more.
You know what I was thinking of in looking at this is this would be a pretty cool shot to bring into the Nick collection, silver effects, and work it up as a black and white, because I keep looking at this and that blue water is so blue, and the sky has a nice fade to it, but it's being drowned out by how blue the water is. So as a black and white, I think it'd be cool. And because you're cropping in so much and you're giving up so much detail, you could select one of those profiles that maybe is grainy or has kind of a timeless film look to it or something.
Yep.
And like the Acros, you know, film noir sort of filter, and work it up that way. And I think, you know, it can be kind of cool looking because it's the opera house and there's some boats on the water that look rather timeless. I'm not sure what that big thing is out in the middle. It almost looks like a submarine, but some kind of platform on the water or something. That's I'd get that out of there just because it's too mysterious for me.
Then you're going to have somebody look at the Sydney Harbor who's familiar with it, like Sue, who's commuted across it, and she's going to say, "What happened to so and so?"
Yeah, that could be something permanently there. So okay.
Yeah, I'm not, because it doesn't have a wake, so I think it is some little permanent structure out there in the water.
If they're just dredging or something like that, then that's temporary. Get it out of there.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, real quick, I think we showed the texture enough. Actually, I don't think we need to talk about it more. So actually, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to minimize this and let's close Photoshop. Maybe my computer. Nope, sorry, don't save. Okay, never mind. And now we're going to stop presenting to everybody. All right, we're back on. And let's talk gear.
Yes.
You ready to talk gear, Steve?
Let's talk gear. Let's talk about Brian's GFX 50R.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, you have a medium format too. So why are you so jealous of his medium format?
Yeah, it's I guess Brian and I just need to talk offline, because you start getting in these medium format discussions and it's like nobody else knows what's going on. It's an exclusive club, and we just like to talk about our medium format stuff.
Yeah,
of course.
Very nice gear. But us normal people need to move on, Steve. And let's go from medium format to just about the smallest cameras we talk about, and that is, well, GoPro. They're finally shaking off that bad karma that they had from the trip.
Oh,
Get
gee.
it? Get it?
Uh,
I actually haven't seen anybody else make that joke, but I am sure a lot of other people have made that joke.
a year
So
from now, nobody's even going to remember that that product existed.
yeah, 2018 was a rough year for them, both product-wise and stock-wise. They came back with a bang. The GoPro Hero 7 has been getting good reviews. Stock is on the up. They're hiring again. And then today, DJI said, hey, here's our GoPro killer. It's called the Osmo Pocket. So I'm going to share my screen right here. It won't
This
be
is
nearly
exciting, and it shows my lack of preparation, having done the image review right into this. I didn't even know this thing was announced today.
Yep, this was officially announced. It had been leaked, and we're pretty sure about it. I was just trying to dig around in my bag to see if I had the GoPro right here. I do own the GoPro Hero 7.
Sweet looking piece of equipment.
Yep. So the big features that set it apart from the GoPro, really, there's just kind of one, and that is the fact that it has a front-facing as well as a rear-facing screen.
Oh, that's nice.
And that front-facing screen, of course, allows you to set up compositions for, vlogging or selfie pictures. It otherwise is extremely similar to the GoPro Hero 7, except that it costs $50 less.
Is the Hero 7 waterproof to 36 feet without a housing?
Yes, it is. Yep, that's a change they made a couple of models ago, that they now don't need the housing unless you're really diving.
That's great.
Yep. And so this has got the time lapse, the hyperlapse, slow motion that the GoPro does. It can do 4K 60, which the GoPro can only do 4K at 2.7. 2700 resolution, very close to 4K. You can upscale and it looks just as good. I've spent a good bit of time online watching side-by-side comparisons, and they both very, very similar. The Osmo is not quite as wide as the GoPro. Stabilization wise, they both look quite good, and that's something I have been impressed. We'll come back to me. The GoPro, I have mixed feelings about it, and pretty much everything I feel about it is going to be the same for the Osmo. Battery life isn't great. Oh, you know what this doesn't have though is the voice activation, I think, which the GoPro has, which is quite nice. I used it that extra day and a half in New Zealand. I had it mounted on the windshield of the car. I could be driving along. I could see an interesting scene up ahead, and I could say, GoPro start video, and it would just start video.
And it would work. There was a funny video when that feature first came out of some guys that were mounting it on their car and they were screaming at it, and it was like clueless. So I'm assuming that's improved over the last couple of years.
It's improved, but that's a great question. It was inside the car. Anytime this was, I rented this little crummy Suzuki that had absolutely no insulation. Road noise was a thing. Anytime I was going a little bit faster, it did struggle to hear at times, and that's inside a car. So think about how you expect to use a GoPro mounted to a helmet, mounted to a bike helmet, held in your hand as you're jumping into the water and stuff. And there's just so many situations where that doesn't work well. So then you got the Bluetooth Wi-Fi set up, and that works fairly well, but I find it buggy enough to be frustrating. The Osmo doesn't have the Bluetooth, so it always has to be Wi-Fi within range, which I expect will be a little bit of a harder hit on battery. And battery life in general on the GoPro is just still, how can they? It's a tiny camera with no room for a decent battery, and it just sucks that battery down. And so often I pull it out of the bag and it's dead, because maybe Wi-Fi, Bluetooth was on for overnight or something like that. So I really have mixed feelings about them. If you have a specific need for an action camera, not just an underwater camera, because I think Olympus and other point and shoots are better for just solely underwater, but for an action or a small camera, for time lapses and stuff, then these are pretty decent. And well, long story short, I think GoPro should be worried. I don't think this is going to kill GoPro, but it certainly is going to take a little chunk out of them, but it's also going to push them. I'm sure we'll see a kind of front-facing screen from them soon in their next model. And I don't know. They've been hiring a lot of software engineers lately, which their software is not great. So it would be really neat if they make it super easy to get your footage off and to find the interesting parts of the footage that you capture. Because again, I've told this story before. There was one of those times we went to Yellowstone, we're all snowmobiling, and this group of other snowmobiling dudes went by, and like 8 of them had GoPros mounted on their head. What are they doing with all that footage? If they're like me, it's just all going to the big hard drive in the sky and just sitting there forever.
Yeah.
It's like it's so hard to wade through that footage and find interesting and useful little bits. It takes so much work. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Hey, I put that music on.
Put the music on and wade through it. So, I think thumbs up DJI. I think it's nice to have another serious competitor. There are tons of other action cameras on the market that are much cheaper, but honestly, those are all crap. You'd be better off filming with a potato. And so this one looks great and offers some, a couple of different features, and it's $50 cheaper.
Yeah, and Andrew mentioned in the chat room, he says, is that a Hasselblad lens? I assume he means the Hasselblad sensor that they started putting in their the Mavic 2 Pro, which he could have been kidding, but actually that's a real thing. If if they start taking that 1-inch Hasselblad sensor and start popping it in some of all of their drone line or these action cameras and stuff like that, I mean. Name aside, I mean, obviously Hasselblad carries with it a great reputable name and stuff, but it's a quality 1-inch sensor that they could put in these things, and that would definitely step up their game.
Yeah. Well, then you're talking about the Sony's RX0 Mark II, which it has exactly that, a 1-inch sensor in it. That is an impressive little device. It's really the same size as the GoPro. It's more than just an action camera. And I'll tell everybody something embarrassing that I wasn't going to tell you, but I've lost the one Sony sent me. I have no idea where it went.
Wait, the camera?
The RX0 Mark II. Yep.
Wait, which camera? What did you have that?
I'm not sure you ever saw it. It was sent to me after we haven't been on a trip. I thought I packed it for New Zealand, but I never saw it in my gear bag in New Zealand.
Is that the one you had the fishing line with down at the shore?
That's exactly right. Yep, that one. Yep.
Yeah, I never saw that camera. Wow.
Yeah.
You just put it out there, huh?
Small enough to lose, folks. But the 1-inch sensor is awesome. I mean, the quality out of that is so much better than the GoPros, but it brings with it other issues like you have to focus it. Where the GoPros and the Osmo, everything's in focus because it's so small, so wide. And so then that becomes a challenge. I have road trip footage from when I rented the van of just the inside of the windshield in focus with the raindrops on it.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't get focused properly. So, but it will be interesting to see where these go. We'll see. Yeah. All right, let's move on. We'll get back to the Canon 30 frames per second not camera in just a second. And let's kvetch about Adobe for a moment. So we've got this new update with texture, a couple other small updates in it. One is collaborative tools online. But along with that, we know they're testing this price hike. I saw this on the Southwest trip a couple of months ago when I was telling the group I was teaching Lightroom to, oh, you can get these 2 programs for $9.99 a month. And I pulled up the webpage and it said $20 a month. And I was like, what is this? I had to use an incognito window, be signed out, and no cookies present in the browser for it to show me the $9.99. And then Tony Northrup is like, well, they're testing this price to see. I don't understand why they show that to exist. It's a confusing mess. They've kind of backed off, and said, oh, no, $9.99 is all we're charging right now for these 2 programs. I'm sure there's going to be a price hike at some point in the future. And it is frustrating. And, despite the fact that I've loaded my catalog on this blazing little fast SSD this year, I still see some real sluggish performance.
I don't know who is handling Adobe's PR these days, but whoever it is taking everything in the wrong direction. Okay, whoops, that was my mic. I understand. Okay, you want to increase prices, so you're going to test 100% price hike. That doesn't. That doesn't make any sense to me. Who's thinking that that's a good idea, and who's going to put that out there for people to see and hopefully drag people in? You know, do like Netflix does and just increase the price by a couple dollars every year or so till you get there. It was just a bad PR move. And then right on the heels of that, they've got this whole thing about the licensing of old versions, and you can explain it away all you want, but the PR of it, the way that it was presented to the general public and its reception was a mess, especially on the heels of this price hike. Not to mention us as hardcore users asking them for a faster product for year after year after year. And what do we get? We get Lightroom CC, we get Lightroom Classic CC, we get Lightroom Mobile, we get a brand new update, and the icon on the bottom of my desktop doesn't work anymore, so I have to create a new shortcut. It's just, what is going on over there, Adobe? I love your stuff, but you just make a mess of everything.
I got a theory. I have a theory that they can't make Classic faster.
Yeah, they probably can't, but you know what? Transparency can be a good thing. Just talk about in simple enough terms that people understand, okay, here's your limitation. But, you know, like I was saying earlier, Photoshop, it can take time, but it can be done. Like it's incredibly powerful. It's an amazing program. I was half kidding, but I was half serious. Brian said, you know, it's time to check out Capture One, and he's a Fuji shooter, so I'm super jealous because Fuji even has their own version of Capture One. And now is a time, if I could do Capture One with my Hasselblad files, I would sit down for, you know, a day and learn how to use it, and then put it into practice and just start using it. And it's going to be a real pain at first, but eventually I've used it enough to know that it does some incredible rendering of photos. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk people out of these great programs like Lightroom and Photoshop, because they are, and I still use them every single day. But good God, what are they doing? There's enough.
No, I agree. I agree. Yep.
Competitors that have good products out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I have fully installed Capture One on this desktop as of earlier today, and got a folder from New Zealand loaded in it and have started editing in it. I really need to go watch some tutorials though, because my editing is very, very slow right now. But you know, that's how I was in Lightroom too. So I'm going to try to straddle both for a little bit and report back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are other options as well. All of them don't feel quite as full featured as I want. You know, despite archive etching, you know, Lightroom is a little slow, but man, its organization tools really work well for me. And then of course the editing tools work too. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. Positive news. Nikon has stopped forcing you to use SnapBridge and is now giving you direct Wi-Fi control of basically their modern cameras, D850, D500, D7500, and D5600. This means that third-party tools can talk to the cameras, and you can set up cool time-lapse, bulb ramping, or just pull your images off with other apps. It's kind of cool, and that's a really neat, more open-sourcey thing that these manufacturers usually don't do.
Yeah, that was great news this week.
Yeah. And actually I haven't seen this. So we've got rumors that Canon's coming out with a 32 megapixel camera that is going to merge the 80D and the 7D line. And I knew that, but I didn't know that we had specs that were leaked. 32 megapixels, APS-C, dual Digic 8 processor, should be able to process very fast. Dual SD card slots, that's good. 10 frames per second, 45 AF points, 4K video at 24, 25, 30, and 60. No word on whether or not we'll get dual pixel autofocus in 4K, which is something they've struggled to do. 3.2-inch rear articulating LCD, dust and moisture sealing, built-in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. $13.99 price, launch coming in late August.
Yeah, so they're talking. So instead of like a 90D and a 7D Mark III, they'll just have this product, right? Is there?
Yeah. So reading these specs and that price, it doesn't really feel like a sequel to the 7D Mark II. It really feels like just a 90D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Because the 7D line, they typically come in closer to that $2,000 mark,
that's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and an even faster frame rate, and
Mhm.
even they are built like a tank, super weather seal. So we'll see. Canon is a big company, but they've been putting a lot of time and energy into their mirrorless. I'm sure that's impacting how much energy they can put into their DSLRs. So it makes sense for them to cut down a little bit as they transition. But I don't know. We'll see. They also, 70 Mark III, I think we've still got. Weren't we figuring this out on the bus in New Zealand, trying to figure out when it was going to release? Still have like a.
Well, we were talking about the 5D line.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, still got another full year for that, if not more, because these flagship cameras really not too often. Speaking of flagship, we have this dude who has had the Canon 1DX Mark II before, Andy Roos, and he teased that he was shooting with some 30 frames per second beast. And so everybody assumed, here goes a little gift for you this weekend, shot last night. It's a very different,
Beautiful
and then
picture.
yeah, he's testing some new kit, one that can shoot at 30 frames per second. So everybody was like, oh my God, he's got the new Canon 1DX Mark III. But no, if you read the comments carefully, eventually he says, oh, no, this wasn't Canon gear. So most likely Olympus. I can't remember why somebody knew that, but they do have their 30 frames per second. The Fuji X-T3 can actually do 30 frames per second too, and electronic shutter and all of that stuff.
Us Canon shooters, we're just forever the optimists.
You gotta hope. You gotta hope. All right, let's hit an other stuff news story. Although I'll just say the FAA sees massive growth in the consumer drone market. I saw somebody say, "Oh, DJI is getting into the GoPros because they know that the drone market is dead." What the heck are you talking about, random internet commenter? The drone market is just exploding, and it's only going to continue to.
Drone market's here to stay for the for a while, I think.
For better or worse. Mostly, I mean, as a drone owner, and mostly for worse.
Yeah. You see all the military rumors that are out there and stuff. In the other stuff, I assume you're going to jump down to the how potatoes and gelatin created color photography, given your potato analogy earlier. That caught some legs on the chat room too. So
did it? The potato
we should all go out there and build our own cameras out of potatoes. And
there's too many words in that article. There's a lot of pictures, but there's too many words. So we're not going to do that one, Steve.
Okay,
we're going to talk about
posts. I'm like, oh, you got to click see more. Sorry, I'm not going to read your post.
We're going to talk about this. I like this, how to improve your compositions by adding depth, because I think we're just going to skim this. This is an article from F-Stoppers, and it's about adding depth to your images. More and more often, I'm looking at my images and I'm seeing beautiful landscapes, but if the mountains are just out there in front of you, it feels very flat. And it can be a pretty scene. It can still be worth hanging on the wall, but it doesn't have that specialness that kind of draws you in. And early on in talking with David McKay, I loved his kind of terminology of, you want to give the viewer a way to walk into the image. And if there's depth to it, there's a place for you to explore as a viewer. So we just got a couple examples here. Light can add depth, because we've got this kind of dark framing, feels heavy in the foreground. And there we got Taj Mahal in the background. And this actually, let's skip ahead for just half a second. Skylar had a question. He's photographing popular DC monuments and saying, should I leave people in or should I take them out? And my answer is often leave them in, because they're part of the story. I love this shot. It gives me a feeling of really what it's like there, as I imagine. All of these people you're in a journey with them headed towards the Taj Mahal.
Yeah. And, it's to Skylar and to all those listening, if you do leave people in there, which I think is a good move, and for a number of different reasons, perspective being one of them, but also just that human element, and there's great shots without people in them, but just be intentional about it. Like, wait for that person to maybe move. You might have to sit there for an extra 30 seconds or something until they move and they're right in that space between a monument and a tree or something like that, where they're kind of silhouetted. You know, just kind of, that teaches you to look as a photographer, look for where people are and where they're going and clicking at the right moment.
Yeah, that's huge, Steve. That clicking at the right moment. There's so often I see an image, if you had waited 10 seconds, or maybe had gotten there a few seconds earlier, that just makes such a big difference.
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Another bit about light for causing depth is the direction of light. Light and shadow play a huge role, as we saw above. Front lit subjects can appear flat to the viewer, but we can help make something appear three-dimensional by lighting it from an off-camera axis position, not necessarily using artificial lighting. So think about the direction of light and position yourself there as well. Obscure parts of your composition. So this I think is a really interesting shot. We have a lot of kind of in our face foreground elements, but then the juxtaposition with this little person up in the river up here really gives a sense of depth, and we can kind of imagine ourselves walking through these columns and getting a wider view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another example. This is interesting. I think they simply used content aware fill to remove this. But I don't know how I feel about this one as much as this is nice, because these are in focus enough that they're not distracting. These down here, as they get really blurry, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about that there.
Slide it back over where they removed those. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a much stronger image.
Without them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a simplicity to it, and maybe it's lacking a little bit of the depth, but they're more distracting than not. So our advice there is
those are put in there.
I think he shot the picture and then he content aware and removed them to give you an example of with and without.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Talking about wide angle lenses. This is, I think, something that a lot of folks use very easily go to a wide angle lens when they're talking about landscapes. But if you don't have interesting foreground elements that lead your viewer and give a sense of depth, then you end up with just making the stuff in the background very small. If we took this shot and we cropped it to a very, this one right here, to a very letterboxy look, it would just be this flat cityscape in the background. But we have these cool rocks, again, a shutter speed probably of like a second or two, that has some little really nice contrast and textures between the smooth water and the rocks, and that leads us up to this futuristic looking city.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought that was nice. I think there's some nice reminders about ways to kind of increase or improve your let me just read the title: How to Improve Your Composition by Adding Depth. I liked it. It spoke to me. All right. And we've got, just a reminder, there's a bunch of great articles that will improve your photography that Roy gathered together. You can read all of those at photorec.tv/MMH. We've just touched on a few of them. And photos from space, it's set your watches tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. SpaceX is launching 60 Starlink internet satellites, and you can watch that happen live.
That is very cool. On the plane flight back from Sydney to LA, I watched a really great documentary on SpaceX. It was about 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
I don't remember who put it out, but it's pretty recent. It had, what was the heavy? SpaceX Heavy, the
Falcon? Heavy Falcon?
Heavy Falcon, yes. It was all about the launch of that, and then the two boosters, the reusable boosters, landing, and man, it was way cool. I suggest people go and watch that if you have an interest in that sort of thing. I just thought it was really neat. It was well done, and kind of made me a little bit of a SpaceX fanboy now. I love the stuff that they're doing. I think it's really, really neat.
It is really neat. Yep. We got two quick questions. Andrew wants to know, can the Pixel cameras be used with Apple computers, Pixel phones? Yes, I only own Apple computers. I use Google Photos, which just backs up my images to the cloud. So that can be used with any machine. Music, I use YouTube Music. So that doesn't, and you can plug them into the computers and drag and drop stuff back and forth to them. There isn't a great program, not that I think iTunes is great, but there isn't a program where you plug your thing in and sync stuff over. Steve, do you do that with your iPhone and Mac? Do you plug it in and sync stuff?
No,
Yeah.
everything's done over the cloud, and I've got Apple Music, a subscription there, so I can just pull down whatever songs I want and put them on my devices. And nothing. I only use the cord. Actually, with my phone, I just set it on a wireless charging stand next to the bed. So I can't even tell you the last time I plugged my phone in to charge, except when I travel.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay, cool. Brian wants to know if I'm going to do a review of this little Fuji X-T3. Yes, I filmed it yesterday, so it'll be out within a week or two. And it's the new style of reviews I'm doing, 5 pros, 5 cons. And as I say in the opening of that video, I struggle to come up with 5 negative things to say about this camera. It's just,
I understand why.
It's lovely. And I also have a 5x5 coming of the Sony a6400. I already have that kind of early review out from being at the launch event. But after using this camera for, the New Zealand trip and the other kind of bits that I've been using it for over the last month, I wanted to share a few more thoughts for people considering those. So those will both be out. And my EOS RP 5x5 will be out Friday, I think. So it's nice. It's nice to have a bunch of videos in the pipeline that are coming to you all. Yeah.
Very cool. I'm so tempted to the Hasselblad has now become my primary camera, but I don't have long lenses and stuff for that. So it's got some severe limitations, which I knew buying it. Mm-hmm. But for my other kit, I'm so tempted to just get into Fuji.
They're nice. They're nice. And the lenses are just fantastic. And they're reasonable priced for what you get. It's just a really nice, well thought out system.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to start. I feel like this show was a really nice, well thought out show. Pretty much.
Well, we worked hours and hours and hours in New Zealand over Taco Medic, figuring out how we were going to do this.
Yeah.
As I was nursing my sprained ankle, I was thinking about how to make Mishmash better.
Yeah, I'm glad you've gotten better. Just a reminder, if you watch this show and you're not a Photo Enthusiast Network member, you're missing out on a whole lot more goodness. You can find out more at photorec.tv/pen. If you're thinking about building a web space, squarespace.com/photorectv. It's very easy at Squarespace, drag and drop interface, and you can save 10% off your first purchase. I'm moving out of WordPress. I'm tired of all the little stuff.
Really? The PhotoRec site?
I'm moving to Squarespace.
Oh, that's great.
It'll save me money in the long run. So I'm going to do it. It's just finding the time to kind of organize and get it all moved over and make sure links work is going to be a little painful. But again, it's going to save me time and energy, kind of put my mouth where I've been talking. Squarespace is great. I priced it out and it's going to be better for me.
That'll be cool to watch because you have a lot going on that website. There's a lot of content and then a lot of updates and stuff that you do with it. So it'll be really cool to see that through Squarespace and what you can do to be able to show people what you can do too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, Steve, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Go make the wife a cocktail. I heard that's your job now.
Yeah. I asked her if she wanted one. We had now I say we. No, I had a big night last night. I took my next door neighbor. He's a bachelor this week. His wife's out of town for a week, and he's the nicest guy in the world. He's like 80 years old, and you'd think he was 60. He's just really young at heart. And I called him up. I said, "Hey, let me go buy you a burger and a cocktail. Let's go have a boys' night out." And it turned into a very late night. And so anyway, I asked Renee. I said, do you want a cocktail tonight? Because I might need to take a night off based on last night. She said, well, if you're up for making me one, then yes, I'll be waiting right after Mishmash. So that's what I'm on.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks so much, Steve. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Set your watches.
Yep. Same bat channel.
Same bat channel. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.